The following video is a discussion I had with Tom Herbert about nutrition and supplementation for climbing. While you're watching, I want you to keep in mind that this is an initial conversation and it's specific for myself. Every climber is different and requires a variation in their plan depending on their starting point. And I recommend consulting an expert to help devise the best nutrition strategy for yourself. The other point I need to make before we jump into the video is around the general discussion of eating habits in the sport of climbing. Now, this topic can be a point of contention for some people, and understandably. Some climbers have put their health at risk by going to dangerous lengths to lose weight, and this is clearly unsafe and is never the path to take. We all need proper nutrition whether we're training or not. And if you're someone who struggles with your eating habits, then please contact professional services for help. I've left some links down below, but find some experts in your area and get that support. Now, with that being said, Tom has done an amazing job breaking down nutrition for climbing, the importance of fueling yourself with the right food, which supplements to take, and how they impact your body. It's a Skype recording, so the quality isn't great, but Tom does a great job with the content. Enjoy.
Okay. Hi. How's it going?
Hey, I'm well. How you doing? You all right?
Not bad, not bad. Okay, so I'm joined right now by Tom Herbert. He is the expert on all things climbing related with your physical health and well-being and training and recovery and diet. And so I'm called you right now. We're recording this right now. You can find him if you want right now at useful.coach. But Tom, I'm here for your help. I've got 1 month to train for a trip to Spain. I'm going bouldering in Albarracín. And so lots of overhang, powerful type climbs. I've climbed, so just a little backstory on my climbing.
Sure.
I'm pretty good. I've been climbing for over a decade, so over about 14 years, and I've climbed quite a bit outside. Like most people, I live in the big city and you don't get a chance to get out as much as I want to, but I've climbed 3 V6s outside in my life.
Okay.
And I'd like to climb 3 on this trip alone. That's my goal.
Okay.
I'm not terribly out of shape right now. I have been climbing 3 days a week. And I feel like I'm doing okay, but I want to get into that next level stage before going. So I've got 4 weeks and I need some help on the dietary side and getting my body prepped and ready to go.
Okay. So yeah, you haven't given me much time, but
I'm sorry.
it's it's okay. It's a challenge. I think the overarching thing about this is to get you prepared. There is not much time for us to do that much body recomposition, and we could, if you wanted to, like in theory, I could pull about maybe 500 grams off you in like a week and a half if you were really strict.
Yeah.
And then, so put it this way, right? The big thing which I say to people going on trips is you don't want to diet and perform. You can't diet and perform at the same time.
Okay.
So what I want you to do is if we work backwards, I want you to be the week before you go. I want your sleep to be really good. I want your recovery to be really good. I want you to taper down some of your climbing so that you go and you start your first day there, really just well recovered, well slept, like all the cylinders, your power's out there so that you can have a really good time on the trip, right?
Okay.
And then, I mean, how long are you actually going for? How long are you climbing for?
1 week. We got 1 week there.
Well, that's fine, because then you can just kind of go all out on that week. Yeah. Okay. So what we can look at really is, I've got notes here, so just bear with me because I'm going to write little things down.
Okay.
Okay. So what are you currently weighing at the moment?
I'm at about 166 pounds, which is 75 kilos.
Okay. And for you at the moment, is this your kind of normal climbing weight, or are you?
Yeah, this is like my normal climbing weight.
Okay. All right. And what, like, if you can say there's like maybe one thing that you feel that you're not like that could be polished up in terms of your health or performance? What is it at the moment? What are you?
I think I could definitely use more power.
Okay.
100%. More power and strength. I feel like my campus ability is not as strong as others, and yeah, I think I would need that, and I think that'd be really helpful for the type of climbing in Spain.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so tell me what is your kind of your general diet at the moment? Like, what is your normal eating habits?
Most days I'll wake up and I'll have a protein shake, like banana, peanut butter, and protein. I'll usually do something like eggs or pasta for lunch,
Mhm.
sandwiches. Dinner it could be more pasta or chicken, or fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you don't like, you're allergic to, you don't eat?
No allergies. Eat anything.
Okay. Would you have any aversion to swapping out pasta for something like rice?
Nope. It's all
Okay.
good. I would do that.
And potatoes and things?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to think of little like habit changes that you can put in place, right, in such a short period of time.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's nothing particularly wrong with wheat pasta.
Okay.
The thing is that you can get a little bit more nutrition, like micronutrition, by having something like rice or potatoes, sweet potatoes instead, right?
Okay.
You're going to get a little bit more fiber in there as well, which is going to just help like gut health going forward. So that's something we can chat about in terms of amounts. I don't know how specific you want to be on this call, but I mean, I think if we're going to talk about numbers and things, we can probably do that.
Yeah.
Do you want that offline rather than?
Yeah, we can do that
offline.
offline.
Yeah.
We can do that offline. That'll probably be easier.
Yeah. So here's one thing just from that conversation, I would say we can look at so swapping out the pasta for like a vegetable source of carbs.
Yeah.
The other thing we want to look at is in terms of an overview, right, is what we understand about protein, right, is very briefly, we have a certain threshold of protein that triggers muscle recovery and growth.
Okay.
And that's to do with just an amino acid called leucine. So if you eat a small amount of protein, like let's say you eat about a handful of nuts, right? That's probably going to have about 5 to 10 grams of protein. That's not enough to trigger this effect. Okay. So people might snack on little bits of protein throughout the day and think, well, I'm having protein. So for instance, they have 2 eggs and they think that's enough protein. But actually, that's not really enough protein. What you really want to do is you want to have around about 20 grams to 25 grams, right? Because what that will do is that will contain enough of this amino acid leucine that will trigger this effect. So for what we would look at is we'd look at your protein shake, no doubt is going to have enough because that's what you generally get with protein in terms of a supplement, in the terms of scoop. Yeah. If you're having eggs on their own, if you're having eggs with pasta, you might be hitting that around about 20 grams of protein, but we would look at that. And then the same with dinner. And what I would probably do is I would try and get another meal in, like another protein meal. Okay. So what I'm looking at is a minimum for you. I would try and get like 3 meals or 3 doses of about 30 grams of protein for you as a minimum, right? Okay. Yeah. And because what you're trying to do is you're just trying to optimize over these next 4 weeks is if you can get these little doses of protein in the right order, or in the right pattern, you're just polishing up what you're already doing in terms of things. And this is what we're trying to do over these 4 weeks. Okay. Is just try and like literally polish up as much as we can.
Do you ever count calories or anything I've never counted calories before, but this has to play in part. I think about climbing. There's always this conversation around strength to weight ratio and what the optimum amount of muscle to mass is. I feel like I could lose a little bit, and that would improve my climbing. But is the worry I got to maintain the muscle while I'm doing that, right? So is that what that is?
Yes and no. um, it's not like people worry about losing muscle too quickly, which is not really the case. Not unless you're doing you're just chronically under eating. The biggest stimulus for losing muscle is by not having a stimulus, i.e., like anyone who's had their arm or leg in a cast because of breakage.
Yeah.
You know, within about a month that you can see the size difference in the muscle. So someone who is doing climbing training, even if they're underfeeding, you're not going to be losing muscle. And also the other thing you got to think about is that strength is predominantly a neurological thing. It's a neurological drive.
Oh,
that's
really?
that's why, for instance, you can take someone like Louis Parkinson, and who's never deadlifted before. And I think I was a first person to give him a deadlift to try.
Yeah.
And I think he went like 140 kilos on his first pull. So the thing was that I stopped him because it was like, you could probably pull higher, but you're going to hurt yourself. And I don't want to be the guy who breaks Louis Parkinson, right?
Yeah.
So climbers are particularly, the strength to weight ratio is just incredibly obvious with climbers. They are very strong for their size. So what you got to think about is, to the direct question, is that I would not worry about losing muscle, even if you were doing a hard diet. So say we choose to do a diet for 2 weeks, and we could do it, and it would be an interesting experiment. I wouldn't want to go more than 2 weeks, because I want the next 2 weeks for you to be recovered.
Okay.
So what we could do is we could, just out of interest, is hard diet you for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
We could potentially take 1 kilo off you if you were dedicated.
Okay.
We probably couldn't get much more. We're looking at about 0.7% of your body weight if we wanted to maintain your power output. But we can have a look at those numbers.
Okay.
Basically, I wouldn't worry too much about muscle. If your protein intake is normal and you are training, then you're going to be fine. Right. And there could be some question about whether or not by losing a bit of muscle, you could actually increase your strength to weight ratio. So for instance, say you were like an ex-cyclist or something, and you had really big like quads.
Yeah.
I've never done this with someone, but potentially what you could do is, like, we could reduce your quad size over like whatever.
Without putting them in casts. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it literally would be like, okay, you've got to do nothing, like no squatting, nothing like that. You know, you just got to like let your legs atrophy as you. I think it'd be an interesting experiment. I don't know how feasible it would be, but you could do that.
Okay.
So in terms of your question about calories, so if we're going to do a dieting for 2 weeks, it's probably going to be impossible for you to do it intuitively, right? You're going to have to count calories, and the reason being is that it's just very difficult to gauge, and we would want to do it quickly. So one thing I would like to do with you, if you do want to do it, is I have an actual metabolic cart, meaning that I can put a gas exchange mask on you and see what your metabolic rate is, your resting metabolic rate is. And what that gives me is a number, which is going to be more specific than me trying to calculate that or estimate it from like body composition things. Yeah. So what we can do from that is then I can actually say, okay, right, we're going to reduce it by this much. And then we look at your food and we say, okay, so this is what it's going to be. And for something as quick as this, what you would probably want to do is have set things that you eat. And it might get a little bit boring, but for instance, if you always know that your protein shake is X, Y, and Z and is say 500 calories, that's one piece that you don't have to think about. And I know as a coach, okay, every day he's either having the 500 calorie shake or the 500 calorie eggs and whatever meal, right? Yeah. So we have these little pieces, because with weight loss, fat loss rather, the hardest thing is the compliance. And the more variables, the more things that you're not going to quite understand. Like you might think that you're eating a cookie that is so much energy, and then you come to me and you're like, well, I haven't lost any weight. and you're like, okay, something's not right here. And then you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I have a glass of orange juice every day. And I'm like, oh, you didn't tell me that. Or you've suddenly now changed to eating nuts because all of these things. So this is the interesting bit. But
I'm down for that. I am a creature of habit, so eating the same thing over and over again is right up my alley.
Okay, perfect.
Love it.
Then we'll do that. We'll have a look at what you currently do, because this is the big thing is with compliance, right? I've got to look at what you currently do, what you currently enjoy.
Yeah.
And then we tailor that. Like, I'm not going to ask you to have avocado and whatever, spirulina.
Yeah.
There's no point. But yeah, then there's no magic here in terms of like magic macronutrient ratios. So you mentioned that you did a bit of ketosis.
I've tried ketosis before because I've seen it in other people, and I was really intrigued by the supposed energy levels you get from having your body run off fat as a fuel source. And I did it for a couple weeks, and it felt amazing. And I felt like my appetite was suppressed a bit. I didn't feel like I needed to eat as much. And my energy levels were up, and it felt pretty good. It's hard to maintain, I think, over time, which is like something with a lot of diets, I guess, it's hard to maintain. So you want to make it a habit. I just love pizza so much, so it's hard to. You want to cave, and you just want to sometimes you just want some carbs. You need something you just want some of that. But I mean, it's something like this. I have a month. I have a clear goal in sight, and I've done it before, so I would be ready to do that again if you felt that was needed. And I did notice when I did keto, there was like weight loss quite quickly.
Yeah. So you brought out a couple of things. So the main thing, the initial weight loss people get on keto is water weight, is hydration. And the reason being is that you store carbohydrate, glucose in your muscles, right, and your liver, and it gets bound to water. So for every gram of glucose you get stored as glycogen, it pulls in 3 grams of water. So what happens when you go low carb, which is the definition of keto diet, is that whereas you'd be kind of maxing out your glycogen stores in your muscles on a normal diet, on a keto diet, that might be reduced by a quarter. So that's why you could basically drop like 1 or 2 kilos in the first week by cutting out carbohydrate, but it's just water weight. It's not really true fat loss in that sense. One of the reasons that a ketogenic or low carb diet is successful actually is because people assume that it's working. So the compliance thing kicks in, is that they're like, okay, I'm going to try a new diet. Look, I've just lost 1.5 kilos in the first week. And they're like, holy crap, this is great. Let's carry on. Yeah. And it's motivation, right?
Right.
The other thing is, as you pointed out in the email, is if you do keto and cut out carbohydrate, you tend to cut out almost all junk food.
Right.
So your diet is going to automatically improve in terms of quality. You're going to be having, if you're not a vegan, you're going to be having much more fresh meat, and you're going to have a lot more like non-starchy vegetables, right? And you're not going to have anything sweet. So straight away, there's this massive shift in the quality of your diet. Yes. And that's what we see really, is that if you improve the quality of your diet, everything else goes in. And what it normally is the factor of just your micronutrition, vitamins and minerals are going up. Mm-hmm. Your inflammation is going down, so you're recovering better. And that could potentially be related to sugar intake. It's a little bit debatable whether that is the case. Fiber is going to help your gut, which is going to help with inflammation and satiety. You're not going to want to snack so much. Blood sugar is going to be better. Sleep is going to be improved. All of these things start circulating into better recovery, which is ultimately what's going to help. And also, because of inflammation, that's going to affect hormone levels and things like that. Now, this is not just related to keto.
Okay.
So with yourself, whether or not doing 2 weeks of keto may be the best way of doing it, potentially, but the question will be is whether or not your training in those 2 weeks tanks, right? Yeah. Because if that's the case, I don't want that to happen. Like I would rather keep at a moderate level of carbohydrate, or what I normally do with clients is specific carbohydrates at specific points. so that you can keep that training output in place, but also a diet that is going to allow us to cut calories off you. So a keto diet or a particularly low carb diet might be more helpful in this sense, because you're going to be starting a diet quite hard, and it's going to feel odd, and you might be hungry and irritable, and your partner's going to get upset if you're moody. So these things are going to happen if you diet hard. And the thing is that I would want to diet you hard for 2 weeks, because otherwise it's a waste of time. If I take off 300 calories and 300 grams off you in 2 weeks, it's not really, I mean, it will help, but
no, I'm ready to jump in.
I mean, it'll be interesting. It'll be good for me to see how much we could do in that period of time. So basically, in terms of the carbohydrate side of things, like we've already said, we'll swap out the pasta for more optimal carbs. We'll be more specific with carbohydrates around your training, and probably find the minimum amount we can get, so that we get you close to keto, not because it's going to optimize anything specifically, but that it's just potentially easier to do as a strategy. And then what we'll do is in the third week, we would start tapering those carbs up. Your weight will then probably go up because of hydration, but it'll be interesting to see. It might go up, let's say a kilo or something. But that will just be hydration, and that's the weight you're going to be climbing at anyway, because you're going to be eating normally, right, on the trip.
Right.
And then protein will get the protein spread. You said you do supplements already. Creatine, you say you use?
Yeah, I've used it before, and I started doing it again now, just kind of sporadically. I don't actually know what the best way to do it. When I first read, people are like, you can do a loading period, but now they're like, don't do a loading period. But I know creatine is well documented to work. When I first looked at it, the I can't remember the strand of it. It's supposedly
monohydrate.
Monohydrate. This one, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it has less water weight associated with it when you're taking it. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what someone I saw online or read said. So I got that one. And so one, I don't know if it's good or if it makes sense to take it if you're bouldering, or if the water weight is an actual thing with this.
You know what I love?
What's the answer? What's the answer?
No. What I love is that sometimes when you spend your life surrounded by people who know similar stuff as you forget, like, this sort of stuff is out there.
People like me know or don't
know.
No,
it's not your fault. It's just information needs to be better disseminated. Okay, so creatine monohydrate, the reason that's most popular is that is the most studied version of creatine. So we're looking at like 25 years of research on creatine now.
Right.
So it is the most studied supplement to date. Incredibly safe. Safe. The only so what creatine does is it's similar to glucose in your muscles. So when you eat carbohydrate, it gets broken down to glucose. Glucose then gets stored in your muscle as glycogen. And when you do a contraction of your muscle, it will use that glucose to power that contraction, right? That takes seconds of time to generate energy, right? Relatively speaking. If you were to just stand up out of your chair, you actually use a molecule where you break bonds of a phosphate molecule very quickly, and you replenish that very quickly. And that's basically what creatine is doing, is that you're taking this creatine supplement. Now you produce phosphocreatine in your muscles. Your body produces about 3 grams a day, right? Otherwise you would die, because it's just like everything that you do, it requires that. So if you were to sprint, right? In the first about 3 or 4 seconds, you would be running predominantly off this phosphocreatine pathway. What starts happening is you then start using more glycogen to add to that fuel mix. And then if you had carried on running for like the next 2 hours, you would start using more fat in top of that to try and build this. So point being is that what we see in the research is that when athletes consume creatine monohydrate, what happens is that you are augmenting that creatine supply in your muscles. And that can allow is, one, it takes the burden off your body to produce creatine. So it frees up other molecules like glycine, which can be used for things like building collagen, which are your tendons and ligaments.
Yeah.
The other thing is it just almost supersaturates your muscles. So that's when they talk about loading.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you're doing is that, say, relatively speaking, just for argument's sake, at the moment you have 1 gram of creatine in your muscles. And by taking 5 grams every day, you increase that to like 1.5 or 2 grams of creatine in your muscles. What it means is that you just have a greater power reserve.
Okay.
And what this normally means is that your power output for a single contraction may be increased, but more we see it in repeat ability. So what you'll find is that, say you're doing a climb, if you rest for 30 seconds before doing the same climb, you're not as powerful, right?
Yeah.
If you wait for like 2 or 3 minutes, you'll be more powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of that is that the phosphocreatine that's been broken to produce that power output is coming back and being reformed again. Okay. So you now have that molecule available again for you to do the power. That's why you recover between them, right? It's one of the factors.
This is sounding like a pretty good thing.
Yeah, it is. The downside of it is there's 2 downsides to creatine. The main one for climbers is that, like consuming more carbohydrates increases your muscle hydration, so does creatine. Okay. So this may or may not be an issue. If you creatine load, and the reason for creatine loading is speeding up the process of saturation. So what you tend to do is do like a week of taking 20 grams a day, right? And after about a week, your muscles are like, we can't store any more, so you just urinate any excess out. Yeah. And then you just take 5 grams a day, which is the normal recommended dose. And what that does is it just keeps topping up. And as you train, you're going to expend more, and then it will top it up. But what happens is that you can put weight on. It depends on how much muscle you have, but you could put on like a kilo of water weight, depending. But what you can basically do is just take 5 grams every day going forward, and you slowly increase. But it works at different people in terms of the water weight. I mean, how often are you currently taking it?
At the moment, I was just taking it on days that I'm climbing. But when I did this before, I would take it every day. I take a dose every day with my smoothie. And I did notice a difference. And then I didn't know I didn't know what the recommended amount you should take over time. So I normally do it in sessions, I guess, or I'd do it for a month and then I'd stop for a month, and then I'd do it for a month and stop. And then I just stopped doing it for a while. And I've been reminded, talking to friends who are taking some creatine now, I was like, I'm going to do this again. I don't know what the best way to take it is. So I just started throwing it in my smoothie the morning of, before I was going to the gym. But it sounds like I could do a loading phase right now, get my levels up to a certain amount, and then start maintaining as I lead up to the trip.
So, okay, so this is where it's new for climbers, because we don't have any data on this, right?
Okay.
So this is a little bit of speculation and just from experience with people. The reason I wouldn't recommend loading is potentially if your weight increases by hypothetically a kilo in 1 week and you're still climbing training, I have a feeling that that's bad for the fingers.
Okay.
Because you're suddenly now loading your fingers with a different load than you were before.
Yeah.
And it could potentially lead indirectly to like an overuse injury. Because it sounds like a small amount. But my speculation is that if you were to load and you were to jump quickly with weight, that wouldn't be a good idea, right?
Right. Yeah.
However, if you were to start from today or tomorrow morning and just have 5 grams, like the normal scoop, right? Have that every single day. Yeah. By the time we get to week 3, you're going to be saturated anyway, and your weight might be trickling up very, very slowly, if at all. And we're going to be countering that by the reduced hopefully the reduction in fat anyway at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the benefit of creatine loading is just you're shortcutting the saturation phase, right?
Okay.
I don't think that's so necessary for climbers, right? I think if you are a sprinter or if you are doing like a rowing, like something like that, I don't necessarily see, like if you're having to load creatine for an event, it means you didn't plan ahead. Like that wouldn't be a good idea anyway. So
Yeah.
I think the answer is basically take 5 grams every day. You can either take it before bed or with your smoothie, I think. And slowly over time, it's just going to build up, and you'll be ready for the climbing trip. Yeah, and you can take. I recommend taking it on your trip as well. You can take like enough in a bag to be 1 scoop every day.
Yeah. Is there anything else you recommend taking? I know there's so much stuff out there, and I don't know how much or if any of the other stuff has been documented as well, or if any of it works. But
yeah, in terms of supplements for climbers, the only other one in terms of direct performance benefit would be something called beta aniline.
I know it. Yeah. Yeah.
And what that is basically a acidity buffer. So what we see with high intensity training or high intensity exercise is that one of the factors that can cause fatigue is the buildup of hydrogen ions in your muscles. Now, people think of it as mostly as what they call lactic acid, but that's not really the case. Your lactic acid doesn't really exist in your muscles. Its product lactate does, which is not acidic. But the hydrogen ions, these is going to increase the pH. So what taking beta alanine does is it actually creates a molecule in your muscles that will counter that acidity. So what that potentially can help with is that you will be able to do greater amount of output before you become fatigued. So that's something that you can try.
Is this something that someone would take right before they work out? Is it a time thing, or is it something like the creatine where you just got to make sure you take a daily dose and it's kind of in your system?
Exactly that. Exactly.
Okay, it's in your system.
So what you'll find is a little bit, it's a kind of marketing thing, is that they will put beta alanine in a pre-workout supplement.
Right.
And the reason for that is you have never taken it before?
No, I have in a pre-workout before.
Yeah.
And
you know that tingle you get?
The tingling feeling. That's how I know it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that what they do is they put it in there so you get the tingling feeling, so you think that it's working.
Okay, so it's really just the caffeine, right?
Well, the biggest driver on a pre-workout is the caffeine. Most certainly, like 99% of the benefit is the caffeine, but the tingle is there for the marketing purpose. The tingling, we don't fully understand what's going on. It's not dangerous. It's not dangerous. But you can get the tingle. So I actually take my beta alanine before bed. And that's how I do it.
You?
Yeah. So.
Okay.
But I just do that because I have my creatine and my beta alanine in my bathroom, because that's the way I remember to take it. So.
Right. Yeah.
And I'll probably take it like, if I remember, 5 days a week, right? It's not I'm not doing heavy training, so I'm not depleting this stuff. So like, this is something that we can try. It's not going to make things worse for you. The worst it will do is nothing, right? And you'll waste whatever, 20 quid, right? It's pretty cheap stuff. Yeah. But it might just give like another little bit of polish. In terms of like evidence-based recommendations, like we have evidence that beta alanine and creatine can improve intermittent power performance. So like there's enough research to say, well, we could throw this in. So those are two things you could do. In terms of any other supplementation, like you're already taking a protein powder.
Yeah.
And the reason that that's really useful is that it's high quality protein. It lacks the micronutrients that you would get from like a piece of meat, right? Like iron and things like that. But what it does give us is it gives us a dose of protein that we know you're taking a good habit to get in place. You have that in the morning. That's also something that I would take on your trip. One of the things I always say, like if you were to take one thing on your trip, take that. I mean, I've had guys who go to Font and they basically eat cheese and baguette, right?
Yeah,
It's
your
fantastic.
diet completely changes, right?
Yeah.
You go on this
And I'm
trip.
saying, like, yeah, depending on the length of trip, like you will start that will start catching up with you. Not that brie and baguette are bad, but the fact that you could be just slowly, like, you're climbing harder than you normally climb,
Right.
and you just are missing out on that recovery.
Yeah.
So if you're taking your protein with, you can start your day with protein and end your day with protein, and without even trying, you're getting like 40 to 50 grams of high quality protein in every
Yeah.
day of your trip, which is just going to help with everything. You've got 4 weeks, so what we could do is there is some more research looking at using gelatin or collagen right before you do training. So this is pretty new. So this is around about probably 2015, 2016, we get the first papers coming out.
Yeah.
And what it is that, so your tendons and ligaments are made from collagen protein. They're like spirals of amino acids, right?
Yeah.
And they're not as well supplied with blood as muscles, right?
Okay.
So what we know is that if you were to just drink a protein shake now, your blood would deliver those amino acids to your muscles to turn into muscle protein.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily the same thing with tendons and ligaments. They work more like sponges. So when you load them, they will suck in the surrounding plasma, right?
Okay.
So what there's been some research on, and it's not specifically on hands or tendons, but more on things like Achilles and things like that, is that by taking some collagen powder or gelatin powder, or like literally some jelly about and to give you a certain amount, around about 15 grams of collagen. What it does is that if you take that about half an hour before you load your any part of your body, the amino acids plus these collagen molecules, these peptides, are in circulation. So what you're potentially doing is that you're shortcutting. So if you think about what collagen and gelatin is ground up tendons and ligaments from animals, right?
Yeah.
There's no such thing as vegan collagen.
Yeah.
So what happens is that you have these little chains of collagen molecules, right, that get ground up and they become a little bit shorter to be what they call peptides, which are chains of amino acids.
Yep.
So what happens is that you then load your tendons by doing any climbing or whatever. Mm-hmm. They suck in the surrounding plasma, which has these peptides, and these peptides get incorporated into your tissue, and it augments the growth and recovery, because it's like your body would have to build this chain, but what you've done is you've taken little snippets of chains
and
kind of put them in.
You're blowing my mind right now.
so this is fairly new research, but we're seeing that on the research that they've done, is that it is augmenting the growth or potentially speeding it up.
Wow. Okay.
So
get some peptides in me.
Yeah. So what we can do, right, is that we will put in something in place for your training strategy, right? Yeah. So what we would look at is getting a dose of protein, a bit of carbs, and some like 15 grams of a collagen, right? The worst case scenario that it will do is nothing, right?
Yeah.
Best case scenario is it may polish up your recovery before you go and climb on your trip, right? If we're going to throw everything at this, right?
Why not? Yeah.
So what it would be is, like, one of the cofactors of collagen synthesis is vitamin C. Okay. So if there's a climber who's having a very poor diet in terms of fruits and vegetables, this can actually impede the healing of their soft tissues. So we'll just look at your diet and make sure that you're supplying yourself with a lot of like healthy vegetables, fresh stuff. But what is an easy thing to do is literally you have like a glass of orange juice, stir your collagen powder into the glass of orange juice, because it doesn't taste great. It tastes like what it is, which is ground up hooves, basically.
Okay. It's delicious. I love that.
So like basically before you do any loading of your fingers, like half an hour before at least, mix it in, drink it down. We've got like 25 grams of carbs going into your body. They're easily digested. They're going to give you that kind of sugar boost quick.
Yeah.
You've got the stuff in. So that's like one little strategy you have straight away that will give you a kind of 2-for-1 there: vitamin C, carbs, and collagen.
And hooves. I love it. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that I would look at is like, what is your sleep like at the moment?
Pretty good. I did see, what is it, Michael Walker. He has a book on why we sleep. He's a doctor,
Yeah.
and I think he did a Joe Rogan podcast, and the guy sold me on the importance of sleep.
Good.
And it's like a performance enhancer, and that's where all your body recovery occurs. So he was adamant that everybody should have 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and if you're younger, even more. But for someone like myself, I do get that right now. So
Yeah. Okay. Right. How much in terms of the quality of your sleep? Do you think, are you waking up refreshed?
No. Oh yeah, I do wake up refreshed. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm a light sleeper, but I get my full night, so I'm pretty good.
Okay. So what we can also try, even though it sounds like it's good, we can polish that as well.
Okay.
So there's a double whammy with collagen. Collagen contains predominantly a molecule called glycine.
Yeah.
And glycine is part of the GABA pathway. It's the pathway in your brain that calms you down.
Okay.
And what we've seen in research is that supplementing with glycine before bed can actually improve the quality of your sleep, right? It can help you get to sleep. So most people I work with, I actually recommend them have glycine as a supplement, glycine powder.
Okay.
Oops, sorry, my screensaver's just come on. Let me just turn this. So you can either have it as your collagen, so you can take collagen before bed, or glycine is so cheap and it's easier to do that. And you just take 5 grams of glycine before you go to bed, and you might find that your sleep quality is better.
Wow. Okay.
The other thing that glycine is doing is your body requires glycine to produce collagen, right? That's why when you eat collagen, the actual collagen is a high percentage of glycine as the amino acid, and that's tied together. So by supplementing with glycine, you take the burden off your body in producing glycine, because you produce it and consume it.
Yeah.
So what it can do is it potentially can augment the ability for your body to recover tendons and ligaments, right?
Okay.
Okay. What is even more interesting is by taking creatine, glycine is part of the pathway of creatine synthesis. By taking creatine, you can reduce the amount of glycine your body requires to produce. So you're upgrading it. Anyway, there's some research to show that the average person requires about 10 grams more glycine per day than what you would get in a normal diet. And if you're loading your tendons and ligaments like a climber would be, glycine is incredibly safe. I mean, people take it like 60 grams a day for certain conditions. I'm saying to you, take between 5 and 15 grams a day. But we can have a look at that. So that's just another bit of polishing. That can help with sleep as well. That's a double whammy on there. The other thing in terms of sleep, what I would probably do with you is the week leading up to your climbing trip, to support recovery, is we could look at a supplement called tart cherry extract.
Cherry extract. Okay.
And what that is it's basically a bit like a super antioxidant. Now, what we don't want to do is take antioxidants, like high dose antioxidants, all the time. And the reason being is that when we do any training, you're sending a response, a stimulus to your body that it has to adapt. And part of that stimulus is little molecules, reactive oxygen species that are running through your cells saying that you have a stress from exercise, an exercise stimulus. And so your body must now upregulate and change to adapt to that stress.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing in research over the last 5 or 6 years is that you halt all of that stuff to aid with recovery.
Yeah.
And your body's like, okay, so I'm not going to adapt, because you just you cut it. So there's this funny seesaw. There are times when you want to focus on recovery. So it's a bit like taking anti-inflammatories, right?
Right.
If you exercise and you get sore, that's part of the indication of what is going on. You've asked the body, you've stressed your body, and now it must heal and get better. If you suddenly throw a bunch of like ibuprofen in, or even aspirin, you basically halt that for the body, right? So what we see is that high dose antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E, and anti-inflammatories and things like that, right? What they do is they can actually halt the training adaptation. So you train someone really hard and you give them painkillers and multivitamins, and you get another group and you don't, that other group will actually get better more than these guys.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So though, the difference is that what we want to try and do is we want you to carry on your training and your training stimulus over this next 3 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the 4th week, we can introduce tart cherry before bed.
Yeah.
To help you recover better, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily need a training stimulus now because it's the week before you go and do something. So we want to maximize your recovery, right?
Okay.
But the other thing that tart cherry does is it influences your production of melatonin.
Okay.
Right. And that's why so what happens is that we see in research that subjects having tart cherry actually improve their, I think it's time to bed or the time they go to sleep, because they are actually now augmenting melatonin production. So it's another double whammy, right? So if on the last week we put in tart cherry, right, we can get you potentially to be much better recovered. You probably heard of something called medium chain triglycerides. No? Okay.
No.
Or MCT oil. Have you heard of MCT?
No, I don't know it. No.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So things like coconut oil. The reason it's very popular with ketogenic people is that it has a type of fat in it called a medium chain. So you have long chains, short chains, medium chains. The interesting thing about what they call MCT, medium chain triglycerides, is that it gets shuttled straight to the liver to be metabolized for energy. But what it does is it actually gets converted straight into ketones. So what can happen is that I can produce, say you had a big pasta meal, your body it's nearly impossible for your body to produce ketones because the metabolic pathway isn't there to produce them. But what I can do is I can give you that big pasta meal with say 15 to 20 grams of MCT oil poured on top, and you will produce ketones in the presence of high glucose in your blood. Because your liver will produce the ketones from the MCTs, right? They don't get burned for energy the same, they don't get metabolized the same way as other fats. So what you can do is, for instance, if you are fasting and you want to have something that's going to help you with energy, what we can do is we can give you, depending on your calorie requirement, we can actually give you MCT oil. So what's very popular is what they call basically bulletproof coffee, which is butter plus MCT. That's really just, it's just producing like a fat bomb. What you can do is rather just have some MCT oil with your coffee. The point of having butter makes no sense. Like you have body fat, you can use a body fat. You don't need to burn butter.
I never took one of those, but I was told about these bulletproof coffees.
The main thing is that is probably the MCT oil in it, and the caffeine. Obviously, caffeine is
so good.
So there's another thing that we could potentially do if we're throwing all things in, is that during your fasted periods, or even just in the morning, if you're just going to have, like if you're going to skip breakfast or whatever we decide, right, by having a little bit of MCT during the day might help you reduce your energy without you feeling, reduce your food without you feeling too lethargic with low energy. So it could be something that we could implement just to increase, and it may be reducing inflammation as well during that period of time.
Amazing. Okay, this has been so good. You're blowing my mind, this conversation. So I'm ready to go. So I'll follow up after, but some things that I'm taking away. I'll be taking creatine and beta alanine, and I forget the cherry thing I can take towards the end.
Yeah.
Some ground up, what is it again? For the ligaments and the
Oh yeah, so
tendons,
collagen powder.
collagen powder. Start working on my food plan so I can plan out strategically the types of foods and how many calories they might take. And then
Yeah.
I can keep it at a certain level and then have one day a week where it's one meal at a significantly lower. So then I'm able to manage my eating habits throughout the week better.
Yeah. It just makes it a little bit easier for you, yeah.
Intermittent fasting and making sure I get my protein higher dosages at certain points in my day so I can get the muscle recovery.
Yeah, yeah. So like 30 grams is what I recommend.
30 grams.
Really, 30 grams per meal.
Yeah.
Depending on, again, we're going to have to look. The other thing is because we're going to be doing a hard cut, right? Is
Yeah.
we'll be increasing protein higher than what you would normally do,
Okay.
right? One, because protein is satiating as well. So by eating more protein, you will just feel less full. You'll feel fuller, which is easier. But we'll be upping your protein more anyway during this time.
Great.
And then switching out for better carbohydrate sources.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean these are some of this. What I've said is something people should do as a regular thing. Yeah. Like this, there's a lot of stuff. Other things are more acute for this, this kind of strategy that we're doing. But yeah,
excited.
we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what we
go.
can. We'll see what we can really optimize. I think that's all I can think of right now in terms of specific nutrition strategies. Outside of just looking at where your current diet is and seeing that sort of stuff.
That was brilliant.
We'll see.
Amazing. Cool. Thanks for the chat.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Tom, for helping me with my nutrition plan and my training for the month. If you want to see the results of that, you can go check out my video where I trained like a pro for 1 month. I felt amazing. I got my body fat percentage down, and right at the point of the month where my energy level started to decrease, we introduced more calories and I felt great. I performed really well on the trip. Everything was amazing. I couldn't be happier. So thank you, Tom. If you want to get in contact with Tom, you can find him on his website at useful.coach or on Instagram at usefulcoach. And I've left links in the description below to all of the supplements we discussed. These are affiliate links, so if you use them, there's no extra charge to yourself, but it does help support the channel. Now have a great week full of climbing, and I'll see you in the next one.